Christians are doing all kinds of things on the internet these days. Some things are cool, some things are strange. I'd like to tell you about what I found Christians doing on this internet. Welcome to the Christian Geekcentral. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here with your Christian Geek Radar for the month of February 2016. Now, this time there wasn't a lot of news, and so when there are months that don't have a lot of news regarding Christian geekery going on, I like to dip back into our portal back at christiangeekcentral.com, where we've got a collection of links to Christian geek websites and creative endeavors going on online or elsewhere that you can learn about online. So I'm going to be sharing some of those today, but first just a couple of potpourri items of news, and the first one is Toil X Umbra, which is a Christian Japanese-styled RPG in the classic style of like Super NES games that's kickstarting right now. And the creator of the game writes, Toil X Umbra is a fantasy RPG that takes cues from many of the classics in terms of aesthetics and playstyle. The game is very story-driven with deep and engaging characters that each in their own way help the heroes find their way to light. The thing that sets Toil X Umbra apart from other fantasy RPGs is that the story is one that edifies Christ. Branch Games, the studio behind the game, is a gaming company made up of believers in Christ who know that in all we do, we are to glorify Him who has called us out of darkness into His marvelous light. At its core, Toil X Umbra is an allegory. It tells the story about darkness, how it enters into us, grows, and consumes us, how it causes us pain and ultimately costs us our lives. And yet in the midst of that darkness, there is one who brings light. Now, I'm not the type to kind of, want to highlight and showcase every Christian endeavor that pops up on Kickstarter. There would just be too many to cover, and a number of those might not be efforts of kind of like the quality bar, I guess, that I have in my mind, that I would feel like, okay, this is worth really pointing people to. What grabbed my eye about this one was the effort being put into creating quality art for the game. I really like the portraits that pop up during dialogue, and you can go on the site and see a video where the creator talks about the game, and you see some footage from the game. And so just aesthetically, I think it looks really nice, and I think the artwork here, the custom artwork, is really important when you're using an RPG Maker game. And if you're not aware of it, RPG Maker is a software that's had a number of iterations that makes it really easy for people to create Japanese-styled RPGs. And one thing that can be true of RPG Maker games is that they all kind of start to look the same after a while. The backgrounds seem to be very much the same as you go from one RPG Maker game to another. And so if you don't do anything to differentiate your tile set or something aesthetically about your game, then it's, I think, just going to get lost in the background unless your story is super compelling or something like that. And for me, I've almost never play RPGs for story. Last time I played a game that, like, the story really engaged me was probably BioShock, maybe BioShock Infinite, but that was also more about how the story was expressed in the exploration of the world and interacting with the characters, as opposed to a more passive reading of text or watching of cutscenes. And so the idea of playing a Japanese-style RPG where it's very story-driven, I'm not so sure that I am especially interested in that, but I know that a lot of people really still like that type of game and that type of telling story. For me, I'm much more interested in how I interact with the game, and so for that reason, as I look at the description here, one thing that I would like to get more information about is the gameplay itself. It says that it's taking, cues from many of the classics in terms of aesthetics and play style, as far as like classic fantasy RPGs, but the bulk of the description and what the creator spends time talking about on the site is the story, the characters, the inspiration, and then he goes back into like the dev team and stuff like that. So I'd love to get more information about what the gameplay is like before I personally back this, but I think that what they're clearly going for is a high bar of quality. And I think you'll see that if you watch the video, just the video itself where the developer talks about the game. It's nicely lit. He's got a nice camera. I mean, it's better production quality, certainly, than what I produce, And even though, that doesn't say anything about what the game will look like, it does say, okay, we are endeavoring from top to bottom to put absolute quality into what we're doing. And it's kind of one of the reasons that I do judge books by their cover. If your cover looks kind of crappy or homemade or something like that, I'm going to think to myself, well, maybe that's how the editing was handled too. It was just handled by the author themselves, and as a result, it just kind of is, it's not really clean and professional. So the fact that there's clearly effort being put into quality on this makes me want to point you guys toward this to at least check it out. And maybe if you're interested in more in the gameplay too, you can ask the developer to comment on that. He does give opportunity to ask questions about the project below, and maybe that would give him an opportunity to share more about this project and attract some more attention to it. So anyway, Toil X Umbra is in Kickstarter right now. As I record this, it's 27 days to go. I'm sure it's going to be like a handful of days or maybe even a week less than that by the time this goes up. The next thing I wanted to point your attention to was the fact that Dragon Cancer is now on Linux with the DRM free version coming. From the designer's newsletter, Ryan Green, the designer, he says, "We wanted to let you know that the Linux version of Dragon Cancer is now available on the Steam store. We're still working on a DRM free version, presumably for sites like GOG.com, but want to make sure we get a few more fixes in and some language support before we release it in other stores." But anyway, if you've been waiting to play this thing on Linux, it is available right now on Steam, and it sounds like it won't be too terribly long before we get to see a DRM-free version of the game, which certainly has a lot of appeal for me, even though I've already purchased the game on Steam so that I could do a review for it as quickly as possible. Moving on now, I'm getting back into what's going on in on our website. See, this is what the portal looks like for the comics animation section. So I'm just going to look at a few of these things today. The first one is Angel Wars Guardian Force. Now, this is a CG animated series that has been out for a while now. They're let's see here. I think as far as the quality of the art and the CG, I think it's pretty good. I think that maybe not today, but certainly when it first started launching, it was on par with the kind of CG animated series you would see being put out by any mainstream or secular studio. So I own the first two volumes of this series, and I've been pretty happy with it. They've actually been collecting dust for a while, but it suddenly occurs to me that, oh man, when my boys and I are done watching the old Dungeons and Dragons animated series, which we're all watching for the first time, we've been enjoying that a lot. So these are two volumes I could pull out that I'm sure they would really dig while I'm trying to figure out what the next thing is we might watch together. So yeah, I've been pretty happy with this. It's action-packed. It's definitely aimed toward, I would say, preteen boys, and I suppose girls that are into more action-y type stuff. It's but each kind of episode, I think each DVD comes with maybe 2 episodes. I can't remember. They're 44 minutes long, so I want to say it's not one 44-minute episode, but I could be wrong. It might be two 20-something minute episodes on each disc. But anyway, I like the design, their take on kind of angels and how they look in the spiritual world, that we don't see. And so it has these angels interacting with people in just the modern day, or maybe is it a futuristic world? Now I can't even remember. It's been so long since I looked at these. But basically, what role angels might potentially play as you and I are making difficult decisions and deciding whether or not we're going to obey something in particular that God has called us to. And they translate that into cool action and fighting between angels and demons and stuff like that in the spiritual world as they interact in subtle ways with the humans that they are protecting and that the demons are attacking in one form or another. So anyway, you can check out that at angelwars.com. The links on Angel Wars, when you go to them, to the publisher, it's like a 404 type of error. So, and the last update that they did on their blog was from, I want to say, what was it, 2 years ago or something? Yeah, 2 years ago. July 3rd, 2014 is the last time that they did any kind of update that I can see on here. So they've kind of been dormant for a while. One of the last things that they said was that they're kind of looking for new ways to kind of explore and represent this universe. So they're maybe looking to kind of reset reskin it or redesign it or something. I'm not sure what their plans are. They seem to kind of be in hibernation at the moment. But although you can't, you're going to run into errors if you try to buy it directly off their site. These DVDs are easy to find on Amazon. There seem to be a fairly decent amount of them. I mean, only 6 left in stock, only 1 left in stock. But I usually find that even when it says only 1 or 6 or whatever, that gets replenished pretty soon after they run out of stock. So and for really low prices as well on Amazon. So Angel Wars, definitely recommend that, especially if you've got some younger kids in your family and you're looking for something that you'll enjoy kind of watching too. That it won't just be this really cheesy, smiley kid fest. There's something for dad to help him sit through that time with his kids. So, or mom for that matter. Moving on, benavery.com is where you can learn about this comic book writer who's been in the Christian comic book industry and also in the secular comic book industry for a number of years. You might know Ben already as he's one of the hosts on the Strangers and Aliens podcast, which is part of the Christian Geek Central network. And I've interviewed Ben before, I want to say about a couple of different things. It feels like we've had a couple of conversations on the Spirit Blade Underground podcast. But anyway, you can check out his work at benavery.com. His newest book is basically a reinterpretation or a representation, I should say, of the book of Job. Ben writes about this project: when I first became a comic book writer, there were 2 projects I wanted to do: the life of Christ and the Book of Job. Thanks to Kingstone Comics, I have been able to do both. Job is the graphic novel retelling of one of the Bible's most mysterious and interesting books, exploring many questions of life and humanity. When Job's life is turned upside down by forces outside his knowledge, his friends become accusers and his own questions get turned back on his when God gives him answers. Expertly illustrated by Jeff Slemons. And that's I'm sure those are his words there, expertly illustrated by Jeff Slemons, but just from looking at the cover alone, I would say, wow, that's certainly true. And that's something that I appreciate about Ben Avery's work, especially in the Christian sector, is that he teams up with artists that can really produce excellent work. And again, that might sound like a familiar word coming from me. That's something that I really care about, something that I think is important as we are being creative as Christian geeks or just Christian artists in general, that we create with excellence and we set the bar as high as we can in the field in which we are creating in. And I think that Ben Avery certainly does that. So again, you can check out what he's up to at benavery.com. And then, let's see, lastly here, I want to highlight a site, beneath-the-tangles.com. This is going to be of particular interest to you if you're a fan of anime. This is a site that says, I'll read the description here. It says, Beneath the Tangles is where, oh crap, I'm going to butcher these, where Ichigo Kurosaki, I am not a fan of anime. Ichigo Kurosaki meets Elijah the Prophet, where Haruhi Suzumiya, I'm also very uncultured and unable to pronounce Japanese names, so very sorry about that. Where Haruhi Suzumiya meets Father Abraham, and where Monkey D. Luffy meets Jesus Christ. It is the meeting point between anime and Christian spirituality. We hope to foster an open community where Christians and non-Christians alike can engage in conversation about anime, manga, and belief. Join the conversation at beneath-the-tangles.com, where they tell you more about them, and I'll go ahead and read this too. If you've just stumbled upon this site, they say, you may be wondering if this is some sort of joke, some ironic take on religion. After all, can we seriously be looking for Christianity in anime? There's no reasonable intersection between the two, right? It's true that there's very little intentional overlap between Christianity and anime. Thankfully, that's not what our site is all about. When an individual is born again, he or she begins to see God's story of redemption everywhere, in nature, in relationships, even in media. I would certainly echo that. Paraphrasing Timothy Keller, for the Christian, every story has 2 stories, the one the author tells and the one that reflects the gospel message in some way. Anime is no different. We invite you to join us on our journey as we look at anime through a Christian lens and Christianity through anime and manga. We hope to create a safe community at Beneath the Tangles, one where we can explore and question spirituality and religion as we chat about anime, and where people of all faiths, or none at all, feel welcomed and are eager to engage in discussion. And so that's a neat site, that is welcoming to people who are not believers, but is definitely running itself from a biblical Christian worldview, which I really appreciate both of those 2 ideas kind of coexisting together, being uncompromising in the truths of the faith, but at the same time welcoming and conversant with people that don't share those beliefs. They got a lot of writers, and from what I've seen, I've looked at it, I've read a few of their articles. I'm not super familiar with all the ins and outs and all the different articles and stuff. It's not something I follow on a weekly basis, but I have read enough to see a pattern of just some good thinking and some good quality articles going on at beneaththetangles.com. Well, if you're interested in finding more of Christian geekery out on the web, christiangeekcentral.com is the place where you want to go. Click on Portal and see what we have for you there. I also hope you'll stop by our forums and introduce yourself, get to know some other people there. It's a friendly community where you can hang out and geek out while we all seek the truth.
christiangeekcentral.com